All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to talk about something that's all around us, shaping our world in ways we often don't even see. We're talking about digital ethics. And look, this isn't some boring rule book. It's about the very foundation of trust in the technology we use every single day.
And to show you why this is so important, let me just ask you this. Could a piece of code, an algorithm, actually stop you from getting your dream job? Not because you weren't qualified, but because of some hidden bias it learned? I know, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but this is a very real problem. And it gets right to the heart of why digital ethics are so incredibly crucial.
And that's not just a hypothetical, which brings us to a really powerful, real-world cautionary tale. We're going to look at a company we'll call Talentflow to see just how easily good intentions can go completely off the rails when ethics aren't baked in from the very beginning.
Now, on paper, the promise of Talentflow was amazing. It was this shiny new AI tool designed to make hiring a breeze. The goal was to sift through thousands of resumes, give each one a candidate quality score, and make HR departments way more efficient. And it was trained on a decade's worth of hiring data from a big tech firm. The result? It cut screening time by a staggering 75%. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, you guessed it. Here's the problem. The AI had learned something it wasn't supposed to from all that data. It was systematically throwing out resumes from perfectly qualified women and minority candidates. And get this, it wasn't programmed to be biased. It had simply learned and then automated the hidden human biases that were already lurking in that 10 years of hiring data it was fed.
So how do we even begin to unpack what went wrong here? Well, we can use a simple but really powerful framework, TAFP. It stands for transparency, accountability, fairness, and privacy. Let's use it to perform an autopsy on this digital disaster.
First up is fairness. In the digital world, this is all about making absolutely sure your tech doesn't systematically discriminate against certain groups. It means you're building for equality, not just for speed and efficiency.
And this is where Talentflow had its biggest, most catastrophic failure. The AI literally taught itself to penalize resumes for things like mentioning a women's college. Why? Because the historical data showed that the company had mostly hired men. The algorithm wasn't objective at all. It was just a high-speed mirror reflecting a decade of biased human decisions.
All right, let's move on to the next principle, and you'll see how these all stack on top of each other. That principle is transparency. And it's pretty simple. It's all about being open and honest about how your technology works and what you're doing with people's data. No secrets, no smoke and mirrors.
Talentflow failed this one spectacularly. Its AI was what we call a black box, which means that even its own creators couldn't fully explain its logic. So imagine you're a fantastic candidate, you get rejected, and you ask why. The answer is literally, we don't know. That complete lack of transparency just shatters trust. It leaves absolutely no way for someone to appeal a bad call.
And this leads us directly to our third principle, accountability. This is all about having a clear answer to the question, who is responsible when things go wrong? Because without that, problems never, ever get fixed.
And again, Talentflow completely fumbled this. There were no real audit trails, so when the bias was finally uncovered, who was on the hook? Was it the data scientists, the engineers, the CEO who pushed the product out the door? Nobody knew. This void of responsibility also points to that fourth principle, privacy. You know, the system hoovered up tons of personal data without ever clearly explaining how an algorithm would use it to make such huge, life-altering decisions. That's a huge violation, using personal info for a purpose that applicants never really understood or consented to.
So, Talentflow is a perfect example of an ethical failure that might have been accidental. But here's the thing, this kind of failure isn't always an accident. Sometimes unethical design is actually a deliberate strategy. This quote really nails the root cause of so many of these problems. A lot of online businesses live and die by the rules of the attention economy. Their main goal is to capture as much of your time and attention as possible. And this creates a huge conflict, right? The company's goal to keep you clicking and scrolling is often the exact opposite of your own well-being.
And that conflict gives birth to something called dark patterns. These are basically design tricks meant to get you to do things you didn't mean to do. And oh, you have absolutely seen these before. There's the Roach Motel, where it's super easy to sign up but almost impossible to cancel. That violates transparency. There's confirm shaming, which uses guilt to push you into a choice, which undermines fairness, and privacy zuckering, a tricky one that fools you into sharing way more data than you wanted to. They're all about manipulation.
Okay, so we've seen the problems. It can feel a little grim, I know. But what's the solution? Well, the answer is to stop treating ethics like some optional add-on you worry about after a disaster. Instead, you have to build it right into the DNA of a product from the very first day.
This is what ethics by design looks like. It starts way back at the beginning, at the idea stage, by asking really basic questions like, do we even need to collect this data in the first place? Then, during development, it means you're actively hunting for bias and building privacy in by default. And finally, when you launch, it's all about being radically transparent and honest with your users.
So the ethical alternative here is called fair patterns. Let's compare. Instead of a roach motel, you create symmetrical friction. You make it just as easy to leave as it was to join. Instead of dishonest defaults that sneak things into your cart by pre-checking a box, you use honest defaults, where you have to actively choose to opt in. It's really all about respecting the user's choice.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds nice and noble, but is it actually good for business? And the answer is a huge, resounding yes. In today's world, trust isn't a fluffy, nice-to-have thing. It is your single most valuable asset.
Let's talk about a number for a second. It's a simple one, but it's powerful: 4%. Under Europe's big data privacy law, the GDPR, the fine for unethical data practices can be up to 4% of a company's entire global annual revenue. That's a number that can absolutely put you out of business.
So you see, every company is really facing a choice between two very different paths. The path of ethical failure, that leads to lawsuits, terrible press, and customers leaving in droves. But the path of proactive ethics, that leads to real strategic benefits, fierce customer loyalty, trust from investors, sustainable growth, and a reputation that you just can't buy.
Ultimately, it really all comes down to this powerful idea. You can spend years, decades even, building a brand and earning people's trust. But one single ethical screw-up, one privacy scandal, can burn it all to the ground overnight. And once that trust is gone, it is nearly impossible to ever get it back.
So, as we wrap up, I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you can see the difference between honest design and digital deception, what are you going to demand from the technology you choose to use tomorrow? Because in the end, the standards we're willing to accept are the standards we're going to get. Thanks for joining me.